It's 10 a.m. Thank you so much for joining us today. I want to welcome you to the California Department of Public Health Childhood Lead Poisoning Prevention Branch's Lead Week webinar series. My name is Bethan Lamb, and I'm a health educator with our Community Outreach and Education Unit. Before we start the presentation today, I'm going to go over some of the webinar settings and features. The audience will be muted to give our speakers an uninterrupted presentation. The Q&A button on the bottom of the screen allows you to type questions for our presenter. If you don't see a Q&A button, you may type your questions into the chat. Questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. Captions are available by clicking on the button labeled CC at the bottom left corner of the window. If you don't see the CC button, you can go to the More button at the top of your screen to enable captions. Please note that this webinar will be recorded and the recording will be available on the CDPH YouTube channel next month. This year, our Lead Week series is focused on lead in consumer items and common goods such as food, spices, toys, cosmetics, and remedies. Before I pass it off to our presenter, we want to thank you for your participation. Today's presentation is the last, but be sure to check out our website for statewide lead poisoning prevention initiatives throughout the year. For today's presentation, our guest speaker is Stefan Liu. Stefan is a graduate of SUNY Stony Brook with a master's degree in general chemistry and has been at the CPSC since 2015. Stefan first joined CPSC as a compliance officer within the Regulatory Enforcement Division, where he oversaw and enforced various mandatory CPSC requirements for consumer products. Now, Stefan is a program specialist with the Small Business Ombudsman and responsible for providing information and education to stakeholders by responding to individual inquiries, creating and maintaining business education pages on CPSC's website, and participating in various outreach events. At the end of the presentation, Stefan will be available for questions, and a recording of this presentation will be available on our website, which is listed on the slide currently on the screen. A link to our website will also be posted in the chat. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to you, Stefan. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let me just share my slides here. Okay. Thank you again for this opportunity. It's great to be able to, just kind of talk things out and kind of help people understand what the requirements that CPSC enforces are. So today I'm going to just kind of do a rundown of what CPSC is and the requirements that we enforce and what resources are going to be available for any stakeholder. So the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission, or CPSC, we're an independent federal agency. We were formed in 1972. There are 5 commissioners with 1 chairman. Our mission is to protect the public against unreasonable risk of injury or death from consumer products, and we do that through education, safety standards, regulation, and enforcement. So our mission is to keep consumers safe, and the vision for the agency is a nation free from unreasonable risks of injury and death associated with consumer products. The CPSC accomplishes this mission and goal by developing voluntary standards in coordination with stakeholders, issuing and enforcing mandatory standards, or banning consumer products if no feasible standard would adequately protect the public, coordinating recalls and facilitating remedies for recalled products, researching potential product hazards, and this would include things like evaluating evaluating marketplace trends for incidents and injuries, informing and educating manufacturers, importers, retailers, consumers, and other stakeholders. We do this primarily through inquiries and these types of outreach events. And working with foreign, state, and local governments and private organizations. And finally, collecting and analyzing and disseminating safety information. We do this through various means like compiling reports. You may see things like our NICE data system, which kind of consolidates a bunch of incidents and injury reports that we get through hospitals. And we also do economic analysis and all that stuff. You'll also find us on various social media websites, Twitter, X, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Just look for US CPSC. My Twitter account, I actually really like it. It's very whimsical, or rather, it's a combination of whimsical and informative. So here are a couple of examples of what you might find on our Twitter account. Our social media person is pretty interesting to get to know, and he puts these together just to kind of be eye-catching and get a conversation started while adding little snippets of important safety information. Alongside those stuff, you'll also find that the Twitter account will post things like safety recalls, a quick little blurb, and where you can find more information about that particular recall. So on the right-hand side, you'll see that there was a recall for this particular type of ATV and all the links associated with that. We'll also post whenever there is a high priority rule that is being published or is being finalized. On the left-hand side, you'll see there that we did a rulemaking on the clothing storage units. Okay, and next we'll go into the lead requirements. So there's primarily two lead requirements that CPSC enforces. The first is going to be the total lead content. All this information can be found on our website, cpsc.gov/lead. The requirement is that accessible components of children's products must not contain more than 100 parts per million lead. Children's products is defined as a consumer product that's primarily designed or intended for children 12 years of age or younger. There's a variety of factors that go into making that sort of determination. The requirement is codified at 15 USC section 1278A. CPSC also has published guidance on what is considered an accessible component that can be found at 16 CFR section 1500.87. If you Google those terms, they'll pop up pretty quickly if you're looking for the text of those particular USC or the CFR. So there are testing determinations for certain untreated and unadulterated materials per the CFR sections noted there. What that basically means is that the materials that are listed on those two citations don't need to be third-party tested for total lead content, or don't need to be tested for total lead content, because the commission has determined that these raw untreated materials do not contain lead above the 100 parts per million limit. In 1252.3a, you'll find things like engineered wood products, which is particle wood, hardwood, plywood, things like that. In 1500.91, you'll find a list of materials like precious, semi-precious gemstones, paper products, wood, textiles, and plant and animal dry materials. Definitely consult those lists if you're looking to have your product tested to see if this testing relief could apply to that particular product, and you don't have to pay for additional testing. There are other exemptions and exceptions that apply for the total lead content requirement. Here's a few that are listed. These are kind of tricky because depending on the specifics of which exemption or exception we're talking about, it could be a complete just out of scope. You don't have to comply with the total lead content requirement, or it's some modification of the actual requirement. So one example is the metal components of bicycles and related products. Those don't need to be third-party tested, but if you look at the next bullet point to the right, certain aluminum alloy components of certain products, which primarily we're talking about bicycles and ride-on products, it has a modified limit of 300 parts per million. So there's a lot of nuances to this particular, or to the list in this particular section. So if you want to take a look at all of those, they are all listed on the our website, cpsc.gov/lead. And you can kind of read what all those exceptions or exemptions can be. Off-highway vehicles are completely excluded from the total lead content requirement, so they do not need to meet the 100 parts per million requirement. So yeah, just take a look at the website and you'll find all the details. There are links to where you can find the statutory or regulatory text on our website. So the second requirement we'll be talking about is the lead in paint and similar surface coatings. So like with our lead page, we do have a lead in paint page. So cpsc.gov/lead in paint. The requirement is that paints or surface coatings used in certain products must not contain 0.009%, that's about 90 parts per million, or more lead by weight. This requirement is codified at 16 CFR Part 1303. This particular rule does apply to paints and surface coatings sold as a paint or surface coating, as well as any paints and surface coatings that are used or applied to surfaces of products. Note that this is not limited to children's products. It does apply to furniture articles, which we would generally consider to be for all ages, or otherwise known as general use products. There is a labeling exemption for certain coatings. This is primarily going to be like industrial type stuff, building maintenance, graphic arts coatings, touch-up coatings for agricultural equipment, catalyzed coatings for radio-controlled model powered aircraft, things like that. Basically, what this means is that if those types of paints and surface coatings are labeled in a specific way, they are not subject to this lead in paint requirement. And then finally, we have just a complete exemption for mirrors, artist paints, and metal furniture articles that bear factory applied paints. This is kind of tricky because the metal furniture articles, depending on how the paint is being applied, sometimes require a type of touch-up paint. That touch-up paint would be subject to the lead and paint requirement, but that initial coating would not. Note that metal children's furniture are not afforded this exemption. They still need to be tested for lead and paint, and if the substrate is considered accessible, then the substrate would also need to be tested for the total lead content. CPSC does define paints and surface coatings in a kind of specific way. It's liquid or semi-liquid or other type of pigment that is suspended and then essentially dried to create a type of film. And there are things that are not included in this definition. So electroplating is not considered a paint or surface coating, so they're not subject to the lead and paint requirement. But if that electrocoating is used in a product that is intended for children, they would be subject to the total lead content requirement. So those are the two the lead requirements that are enforced by CPSC. Related to that, we have the certificate requirement. So every domestic manufacturer or importer of a product subject to a mandatory consumer product safety rule have to issue a certificate of compliance stating that they meet that particular rule based on testing or other supporting information. Certificates are maintained by the responsible firm, so the domestic manufacturer or importer of record, and they have to accompany shipments of the products. That includes every single time it is being imported into the US, as well as any subsequent distribution or shipments to distributors and retailers. The statute does not require the statute does not require certificates to be provided to consumers. However, some firms do make that information available upon request, or sometimes they'll post it on the website. So that does vary from firm to firm. We do have illustrative examples of certificates. Those are available at the links provided there. The two are pretty much identical in that the information provided is basically the same. It's just that we call the CPC is a children's product certificate, so specifically for children's products, and the GCC is a general certificate of conformity for general use products. There are little differences in the or rather how you get to that point of creating a certificate, but the certificates themselves are pretty much the same. They all require 7 pieces of information, which we'll be going over shortly here. So here are the 7 pieces of information that's required for a certificate. Going down the list, first is going to be the identification of the product. So the certificate does need to be specific to the product that it accompanies, such that it describes that particular product and it can't be used to accompany any other type of product. So basically, we ask firms to be as specific as possible. It doesn't really prescribe how, it's just make sure it's being specific. The second is going to be the citation to each safety rule that this product needs to comply with. Number 3 is going to be the identification of importer or domestic manufacturer. It does need the company name and mailing address. Number 4 is the contact information for individuals maintaining test results. This is a little tricky because sometimes importers may be relying on a foreign manufacturer's testing or certificate, which is allowed under certain circumstances, provided there are certain prerequisites that need to be met. But in general, relying on upstream firm or upstream manufacturer is acceptable for your certificate. So there are times where the test results may not be maintained by the actual responsible party, the importer. So the contact information may not always match the identity or may not always be a person from the firm identified in number 3. But doesn't no matter who's being listed here, the contact information does need to include a specific direct person's name, email address, and phone number, along with the company name and company address. The idea here is that we need somebody to reach out to in order to obtain any kind of supporting information for that particular certificate. We do say that general inboxes like info@company.com is generally frowned upon unless that particular inbox is going to be reviewed regularly and there is a responsive request if any type of request is made to that inbox. Number 5 is the date and place of manufacture. This is going to be for the finished product. Date has to be a minimum of month and year. The place of manufacture has to be a minimum of a city, state, province, and country. Date and place of testing, same thing. The date has to be minimum of a month and year. The place of testing has to be a minimum of city, state, province, and country. And finally, we have identification of the testing laboratory. So this is just the name and address of the laboratory that conducted the testing of the actual product. A couple of things that I do want to go over in a little more detail. So number 2, citation to each safety rule. For the 2 requirements that we spoke about earlier, total lead content is going to be 15 U.S.C. section 1278A, and the paints and surface coatings are going to be 16 CFR part 1303. So those 2 is how we prefer they be listed on a certificate. Laboratories sometimes as either part of their line item, or if laboratories are generating the certificate for companies, they may call it something a little different. It may look a little different, but these are the 2 citations that these are the 2 legal citations that we reference, and this is how we prefer to have it. And then number 6, the date and place of testing. So as we see here, it's going to be month and year, and then the actual place of testing. I wanted to highlight this particular section because previously we spoke about the testing determinations. So if you are relying on a testing determination, this is where you would put that citation for that particular determination. So 16 CFR section 1500.91 D4. This is the testing determination for lead content in unadulterated wood products. So if the product is basically just wooden building blocks that has no paint, it's just engraved, no finishes, no coatings or anything like that, it's just complete wood. You don't have to do third-party testing for lead content, but we do recommend putting the citation here to indicate that no testing was done. Obviously, your date and place of testing would be NA at this point because no third-party testing was actually done, and you may not need to identify a testing laboratory. So Section 7 can also state NA. Right. Now we're going to get into the enforcement of the lead regulations. So we do enforce and also educate in a variety of different ways. The import surveillance is kind of the key one. So anything that's being imported into the country, we do have CPSC staff allocated at various ports all along the U.S. border. And they'll review and examine shipments that are coming in for a variety of different requirements, including the total lead content and lead and paint requirements. Our port staff do also have machinery, so they can do a screening with their XRF machines, X-ray fluorescence. So that's going to check for the total lead content at the ports, and then if the screening results in a high reading, then they'll obtain a sample and take it back to our laboratories for more clean room testing. We also have establishment inspections. So these are going to be physical inspections that are at the firm's warehouse, their actual retail location, whatever the case may be. This is typically done in response to some kind of a report that we received and we need to follow up on something, or the firm wanted us to come in and check out their stuff. But establishment inspection generally means it's just going to be some kind of a physical visit to the firm's facilities here in the U.S. And then we also have in-depth investigations. These are in response to injury and incident data that we receive, typically going to be something that's pretty egregious. This involves a lot of information requests, just how this came to be, what actually went wrong. So there's a long process associated with that. We also have recalls. We went over that a little bit earlier. Unilateral notices. For CPSC to put out a recall, it does have to be a voluntary recall in coordination with the company. If for whatever reason we're not able to come to a conclusion, CPSC staff will put out a unilateral notice, basically stating that we noticed an issue with these types of products, and we advise caution, or we advise not using it. Whatever the actual notice may say varies from product to product. And then finally, we have education and outreach. These are these types of events that we put out either through webinars or going to actual other people's webinars and presenting there. So there's a variety of different education and outreach projects that the SBO, the Small Business Ombudsman, is working on. The first three items on this list, because typically there's going to be some form of actual physical product or physical sample that is collected, they'll almost always, if there is an issue, they'll result in what's called a notice of violation. So for a sample that's collected at the port, CPSC staff will review it, and if there is a violation found, they'll write up a notice of violation, send that to the importer, basically informing them that we found this problem, and we're looking for some kind of remediation, whether it's going to be seizure or correct future production or some kind of reconditioning. We do post all these, we do post the data points for the notice of violation. We're not able to kind of post all of them. They're kind of long letters, but we do post the data points for the notices of violations on our website, cpsc.gov/recalls/violations. So you can kind of historically see what the violation was for a particular type of product and the timelines associated with that. It is on a kind of a rolling basis, so it's not, you won't find violations, immediate violations there. So there is some kind of a lag that they do need to do data cleanup before posting that information. This slide here shows the lead-related recalls and violations that CPSC has been involved with. On the left there, you'll see the lead-related recalls. They're kind of on the rise, depending. Unfortunately, I couldn't get much more historical data beyond that in time for this presentation, but it kind of gives you an idea of where we are as far as lead-related recalls. And on the right-hand side, you'll see lead-related violations. Those are product specific. It's not necessarily case specific. So the slightly above 400 for FY24 is going to be 400 plus products that we found to be in violation of a lead-related requirement. Okay. Next, we'll be talking about the resources that are available to consumers. I do know consumer resources here, but this is really for any stakeholder that may be interested in CPSC's stuff. The first is going to be recalls. Just go to cpsc.gov/recalls. They're all posted there. It is searchable, so you can look for certain companies, certain product types, certain violations. You can filter however which way you'd like. CPSC's newsletters. We do have several of them. If you go to cpsc.gov/email, we'll see a screenshot of that later in this presentation. This is a big one. It's a little more technical, but CPSC's Federal Register notices. This is where CPSC will post any kind of proposed rulemaking, final rules, just anything kind of like associated with requirements and resource documentation and things like that. Again, it is very technical, but it is kind of day of posting. So if you sign up for the Federal Register notices, you'll get immediate access to what a proposed rule is or what the actual upcoming requirements are going to be. And then when the final rule comes out, you'll see exactly what the final rule is. If consumers have a report of an unsafe product, they can submit those through saferproducts.gov. We'll see a screenshot of that later on as well. And then consumers can always contact the Consumer Ombudsman, cpsc.gov/about-cpsc/consumer-ombudsman. If you just look up CPSC Consumer Ombudsman, you'll find their contact information as well. And finally, we have the Neighborhood Safety Network. This is where CPSC will create educational pamphlets and posters talking about the various CPSC activities and recalls and safety notices. These are all like readily available information that you can either download, request copies of, and they're pretty handy to have as a resource. All right, so recalls, this is what our homepage currently looks like. You can find the link for the recalls here on the top left of that page, recalls and safety education. It should be the first item on that list when you click on that drop-down menu. We also do have a sort of an app for your phone. If you go to cpsc.gov/data on your mobile device and follow the instructions, you can get an app on your phone for viewing and getting notifications of CPSC recalls. For our newsletters, if you go to cpsc.gov/email, this is what you'll see. Put in your email address, and then when you scroll to the bottom, there's different options of what you're interested in subscribing to. You have the business education newsletter. So that's something that our team, the Small Business Ombudsman, puts out roughly on a monthly basis. It kind of summarizes all CPSC activities, which includes what final rules or what proposed rules that CPSC is working on, as well as anything that the Small Business Ombudsman may be working on, such as announcements for training webinars or stuff that we recorded and posted on YouTube. The second one is the Neighborhood Safety Network. You can subscribe to that to get notification anytime there is an update or an addition to the information available for the Neighborhood Safety Network. And then the public calendar is going to be notifications anytime there's a public calendar, or rather, I think it's a weekly email. Anytime that there is some kind of an event happening associated with CPSC, you'll get this weekly email about here are the upcoming events for this particular week. Recalls, if you go to the recalls page, has its own separate mailing list. So here's the Federal Register. This is CPSC's page on the Federal Register. It is not the Federal Register homepage. If you go to the Federal Register homepage and just search or type in Consumer Product Safety Commission, this should be the page that kind of pops up. To subscribe to our Federal Register notices, just click on the subscribe button, enter your email address, and you'll get notifications anytime that some kind of Federal Register notice is being posted. There are two different options, I believe. One is when it's actually being posted, and then one is a day before preview. So the day before preview is just kind of a PDF document that announces that something's coming up in the next day. Either works fine. You'll get direct links to the actual information in either case. This is the screenshot for saferproducts.gov. For consumer reporting, you'll click on this first button here, Report Now, under the Report Unsafe Products. Businesses can sign up for saferproducts.gov, and they'll get a notification anytime that somebody has submitted a report for their product. It's generally a good way to keep track of any kind of incident trends that may be happening with a particular company's products. And it helps companies if they need to do any kind of reporting with CPSC. One of the primary or one of the big things with CPSC is that if a company knows there's an issue related with their product, that they do need to report it in a timely manner. So this would help companies stay on top of that. You can also search the database for unsafe products. Just type in that second box there. And we also, again, have the Neighborhood Safety Network. You can sign up to that. If you go to that page, that's where you'll find all the information related to the Neighborhood Safety Network. There's a bunch of good information there, FAQs, posters, other kind of contact information that may assist anybody that's interested in learning more about CPSC's requirements, as well as the hazards that we like to warn consumers about. So specific to this particular presentation, we actually do have an updated lead poster. So this is the poster that it looks like, and you can just kind of print it out, put it on cardstock, and hand it out for any kind of local event. And I think it's pretty nifty. It just kind of summarizes the basic requirements. So CPSC also does work a lot with stakeholders, including state and local governments. We're pretty small entity, so we do like to coordinate our efforts. The CPSC Division of Field Operations, also known as our field staff, they are located throughout the country. They help with the inspections for firms, which is the established inspections that I mentioned earlier. They also investigate consumer complaints involving potentially dangerous products. So if a consumer reports through saferproducts.gov and it is something that we'd like to follow up on, our field staff would be the ones reaching out, asking for more information. The field staff also help screening with the import shipments at the ports. They conduct retail surveillance, working closely with state and local officials. They also represent CPSC at various meetings, events, conferences. Sometimes even in the news, you'll see some CPSC field staff participating in news reporting. We do have a CPSC state and local program. The field staff is also responsible for implementing this particular program. It's in Section 29A of the Consumer Product Safety Act. It basically says that the commission has to establish a particular program to promote federal and state cooperation. So field staff works pretty closely with the state and local authorities, engaged in activities related to health, safety, consumer protection, investigations, as well as educational programs. And all of this is accomplished through a variety of ways, conducting recall effectiveness checks. So part of a recall with companies typically is that they put up some kind of poster or some other kind of educational material related to the recall. So our field staff will do a recall check to make sure that that is being followed through. We participate in information and educational campaigns, support state outreach activities with consumers, and sharing recall information via print, electronic medium, and multiplier events, and then providing technical and injury statistics reports. Again, that's similar to like the NICE data where we'll get the hospitals to submit incident data and kind of compile it into data points to see which particular products have some kind of an incident trend. States and the state outreach activities is well, participating with states is tricky because it is kind of I guess a two-way street. We do reach out and we hope that states reach out back to us. So in that kind of in that aspect, states can report their own unsafe products through saferproducts.gov. There isn't a drop-down option for state government, not just consumers. So states can feel free to submit their own unsafe product reports that way. We do also highly recommend states to identify and reach out to the local field staff. If they don't know who they are, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll put the states in touch with whoever their local field staff will be. So we also do have a variety of other safety campaigns. A few of the more common ones here are going to be fire safety, pool safety, Anchor It, and the carbon monoxide. So for fire safety, we have this poster for the Neighborhood Safety Network. Again, it's a summary of the facts related to fire safety. We also have our Pool Safely campaign, poolsafely.gov. It's and there. One of the rules that are associated with that is the Virginia Graham Baker Pool and Spa Safety Act. Essentially requires that public pools and spas have a safe drain cover to prevent hair entrapment and other forms of entrapment. We also have our Anchor It campaign. So that's to prevent TV and furniture tipovers. As a result of this particular campaign, or probably in conjunction with this particular campaign, the Congress Congress established the Sturdy Act, which incorporates an ASTM standard to make clothing storage units safer by requiring stability, anchor kits, things like that. And then we have our carbon monoxide safety poster here. Again, this is pretty data heavy, but it is kind of a little one pager that provides some safety tips related to carbon monoxide. Connecting with CPSC, it's pretty simple. Again, reporting an unsafe product through saferproducts.gov. We have safety education centers that on our website that you can visit for more information. If you have a question, you can contact the CPSC hotline. The phone numbers are available there. If you do have a more pointed question about a rule or regulation, feel free to reach out to the Small Business Ombudsman. My contact information will be at the end of this presentation. You can review the injury statistic reports data. That is publicly available. If you go to that website, that's the NICE data that we were talking about. It is limited in that we're only working with a certain number of hospitals. Obviously not all hospitals have signed up. So most of the data is going to be projected data, but it does give you a good idea about what the trends look like, what the injury trends look like, and what we're seeing as far as what's causing the most harm, and why that's happening. All right, that's my presentation. I'm going to skip the slide here. This is my contact information. If you ever need to contact the Small Business Ombudsman, the cpsc.gov/SBO contact, that's going to take you to our contact form, and that'll just send an email to us letting us know that you submitted a form. You can also call us toll free using that number. It is kind of a busy number, so I definitely recommend leaving your name, number, and voicemail for us to actually reach back out to you. We do also have our inbox, sbo@cpsc.gov. And again, sign up for our business education newsletter. It's the best way to stay up to date on any new proposed or final rule.
Great, thank you so much, Stefan.